Presents the Millipede Effect Documentary. The Millipede Effect is a quest for more understanding and help regarding the homeless, stranded, and down and out. Government, civic organizations, and religion all play a major part in finding ways to help the plight of the homeless. This is displayed on a daily basis by so many who are constantly doing their part through service, financial giving, and voluntary work. However, the challenges still remains. Homelessness in all facets is like the millipede, with its many body parts and many legs. There is much misinformation about what is going on and even greater fear about the problem. We take a look at the successes and challenges that this age old problem of finding ways to help the homeless, stranded, and down and out. The millipede. The millipede is an invertebrate with an elonged body composed of many segments, most of which bear two pairs of legs. Each of these segments is actually two segments fused together as one. The word millipede is formed from the Latin word for 1,000, but there is no evidence that the millipede has 1,000 legs. The millipede's body is similar to a long train in that it has a series of connected sections. However, a train has rail cars with wheels, and each section does not have the ability to work independently of the others. The millipede's first segment and usually its last segment have single pairs of legs, while the other segments are double-legged. All the segments work in collaboration with each other. The millipede grows as it ages by adding segments to the body and legs to each segment. Millipedes are among the oldest known animals. They are hunted and preyed upon by various animals, including reptiles, birds, mammals, and insects. Other invertebrates have specialized structures that allow them to feed on millipedes. The millipedes move slowly. All of its legs work together and in sync. On each side, each pair of legs move together in the same direction and in the opposite direction on the other side, creating a rippling effect. Most millipedes feed on decomposing vegetation, feces, and organic matter mixed with soil. They often play an important role in the breakdown and decomposition of leaf litter. Some millipedes are herbivorous and feed on living plants, and some species can become serious pests to crops. Homelessness. Ask most people what homelessness is, and you may hear someone who's out on the streets, sleeping under a bridge, begging for help. Ask those same individuals what circumstances may have caused an individual to become homeless, and the answers will vary widely based upon the people's experiences. Most of our understanding and interpretations are based on our perceptions, what we hear from others, and even movies and other entertainment. Sometimes our ideas of a homeless person is based on how we look at ourselves. By now, many people have read or at least heard about Chris Gardner's autobiography, which he described his 1 year struggle with homelessness after facing an unfortunate challenge. The movie, The Pursuit of Happiness, starred Hollywood acting sensation Will Smith as Chris Gardner, shined light on how hardworking individuals with motivation and initiative can end up homeless. If watching the movie was your first understanding of the problem, you might believe that with the right will and determination, anyone should be able to beat the saga of homelessness. The Chris Gardner story is a remarkable one that should be admired by all. An interesting comedy movie directed by John Landis hit theaters. Trading Places starred some of the biggest actors in the movie industry: Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd, Ralph Bellamy, Don Ameche, and Jamie Lee Curtis. And it was one of the highest grossing films of the year. The story centered on a bet made by the Duke brothers, Bellamy and Ameche, that involved making two individuals from different social settings or trading places to see if environment upbringing, nature versus nurture, is the cause of success. At one point, Billy Ray, played by Eddie Murphy, a homeless street hustler who pretends to be disabled, was asked why is he homeless and why he turned to a life of crime. Is it perception or is it reality? How we tend to interact with those that we come across that are homeless is based upon our understanding of what we know about those individuals being homeless. Not necessarily the individual themselves, but how we perceive people of being homeless. Let's take a look at some of the perceptions of homelessness. One perception is that they are criminals. It's safe to say a good number of individuals who are released from jail may end up homeless. If you have no family support structure, then where will you go when you're released? If you have a felony record, how do you find suitable employment? If you have no money, how do you eat or find suitable housing? If you've been incarcerated for some time, then all of your belongings are no longer available. Your credit history will be non existent. All of these things can hamper a person trying to get a fresh start. These factors can make it difficult to function in the society without being dependent upon someone else. That they are con artists. Every one of us can think about a time when we witnessed someone standing on the corner of a busy intersection, under an overpass, or outside of a store soliciting aid. We may have wondered if that individual was legitimate. We've seen healthy looking individuals holding signs that read homeless, and we probably thought, that individual needs to get a job, or where did they get the pen and cardboard to make the sign? Or how about the person you've seen on the corner on several occasions? Have you wondered if he was being honest? You've probably said to yourself, no, now this is ridiculous. He's been here doing the same thing over and over. The thought is that they're not homeless by running a scam. There are stories of individuals who hold signs seeking assistance and are later seen driving off in a nice vehicle. Is it feasible to follow someone around after you've assisted them? Probably not. Movies depict individuals who have pretended to be homeless and then change into another set of clothes and go on with their normal lives. All of these things affect our perceptions. Is that they are just lazy. At times when people are being squeezed through taxes at all levels and government spending is out of control, working Americans are in a foul mood. If there's a hint of someone not working or contributing their fair share, it becomes a problem. America is a nation that was built upon the backs of the working class. Most Americans have no problem supporting those in need. However, the standard is if you don't work, then you don't eat. If you can work and are not working, then you're considered a deadbeat and just lazy. They're just drug addicts or winos. Now, this is an interesting one. How often has it crossed your mind that a homeless individual will take your money and purchase an alcoholic beverage? How often have you heard that a person lost everything due to a drug addiction and is now out on the streets? One has to believe that there is some validity in those stories. Imagine an individual is holding a sign that reads, homeless and hungry. You reach into your pocket, give him $2. You drive back later and see the individual coming out of a liquor store. That may change your mind about how you view some people the next time you look to help them that is holding a sign saying homeless and hungry. Is that they are mentally ill. We've all seen individuals walking or standing on the corner and thought to ourselves, something is strange about that individual. Maybe it was a certain look, or he was acting in a way that seemed extremely odd. Perhaps they were talking to themselves. It is one of those images, once you see it, you can't get it out of your mind. It is haunting and frightening to think that someone as vulnerable as a young child in the wilderness could be on the side of the road, living under a bridge, or wandering in a park, subject to all sorts of danger. A homeless person with a severe mental illness can be preyed upon in a way that can be cold and callous. However, there's another action we may have when we see those who are homeless and seem to have mental illness, not pity, but fear. So, what are some of the real causes for someone to be homeless? For someone to be homeless? Natural disasters, disability, in debt, domestic violence, government shutdown, rising unemployment. All of these can hamper a person's lifestyle and really move them into being homeless. Awareness. You know that feeling when you buy a new car and you feel very special because you believe that car is unique? Then all of a sudden you look around and you see other cars just like yours. None of us are naive enough to believe that our new car is the only car that the automotive company made. However, our sense of recognition or awareness has been heightened, and we become more aware of other cars like the one that we drive. Each day, things go on around us that we barely notice. The same thing applies when it comes to homelessness. There's a number of different things that you start to become aware of that kind of signifies that a person could be homeless. Not necessarily all of these examples I will show you designates a person being homeless, but in my walks of seeing things, these things are some of the more recognizable things to make a determination if a person could be homeless. Strollers, dumpsters, backpacks, bass carts, busy intersections, bus stops, railroads, abandoned car washes, convenience stores, abandoned houses, and of course, the good old sign. Now, there's also sleeping under a bridge, hanging out around soup kitchens. All of those things are good examples that a person that are in these areas doing these things might be homeless. But that's not always the case. Take like the picture here with the young man holding the sign. That is actually me. I became, or shall I say, I pretended to be homeless one weekend on a busy intersection. And I held the sign up for about 2 to 3 hours. And yes, individuals offered help. I didn't take it because I actually wanted to see what it would like to feel like you were homeless and was needing help. Samaritan, Jesus, and recorded in the Gospel of Luke. Various interpretations of the parable have become part of the mainstream, and today you often hear people say, I was a good Samaritan today, or I did my good Samaritan deed. The parable reads as follows. A certain man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers, and they stripped him and beat him, went off leaving him half dead. And by chance, a certain priest was going down on the road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. And likewise, a Levite also, when he came to the place and saw him, he passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan who was on a journey came upon him, and when he saw him, he felt compassion and came to him and bandaged him up, cleaning his wounds, pouring oil and wine on them. And he put him on a beast and brought him into an inn and took care of him. And on the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper and said, "Take care of him. Whatever more you spend, when I return, I will pay you." Jesus went on to explain who truly had shown mercy towards the man and who truly was his neighbor. In a later chapter, I will discuss the role of church in organized religion. But now I want to focus on how the parable relates to the homeless, highlighting a couple of points. The parable itself did not specifically identify this man who was robbed and left for dead. But based on the people to whom Jesus was speaking, it seemed likely the person resembled his audience. One thing is for sure, the person was in a bad state, physically and probably emotionally. Many who are homeless and broken, both physically and emotionally, left on the side of their road of lives in a dead state. This physical and emotional toll may have been inflicted due to one of the following reasons: economics, natural disasters, no government funding to help with the programs that they need, domestic violence, mental health issues, disability, or depression. A homeless person may be on the side of the road of his life, and several things may have happened as he or she interacts with others. Many will pass by with no reaction or emotion towards the individual. Others will have compassion in their heart and will find a way to stop and help. Some may help by giving some money, buying a meal, or donating to a local charity. A few people may follow up with the person that they encounter, while others may not, out of sight, out of mind. Some may leave the situation feeling good because they will say they did a good deed. In other words, I was a good Samaritan today, or I did my good Samaritan deed today. Jesus' focus was not just on feeling good about our actions, but understanding the reasons and purpose of why we would help someone. The question we have to ask: did we help because the person was a family member or a friend, or for self gratification? The interesting thing about the parable of the Good Samaritan was that the Samaritan's act was not singular. It was not a feel good act, but an act of compassion to make sure the person was all right. In all fairness to those who may not make any gesture to help, they may have good reason, real or perceived. But the question becomes, who truly is a neighbor when it comes to helping the homeless? Government's role in helping the homeless. There are a lot of people who regard the role of government and the effectiveness of most government programs with skepticism. A good portion of the country feels that the government has failed in the following key areas: the economy, job creation, protecting the environment, and security. Some says the government does not do enough, while others believe it does too much. It all depends on what you expect the government to do. The government is for the people and is responsible for the people. When I speak about the government, I'm referring to all levels: federal, state, and local. Each segment has major budget constraints, political challenges, and an uncertainty about its ability to meet all the needs of society. As with most things, there's really a true balance that has to happen. The role of government is to look for ways to meet the needs of all citizens in a prudent and equitable manner. It is an extremely tough challenge, and I applaud all the hard-working servants of the people for the outstanding job that they perform. I realize that government alone cannot solve the problems of the homeless, stranded, and down and out. It takes a multitude of people to come up with the best solutions and the resources to ensure that those efforts are driven by a common cause. Its role in helping the homeless. A bit of self-disclosure here. I am a follower of Jesus Christ, a Christian, and therefore I believe the Bible is God's inspired word and that it's infallible. I am also a human resource professional, and I understand that to be effective in my job, I have to look beyond my own personal beliefs and be consistent and fair as prescribed by the law and the rules that govern my profession. Earlier, I spoke about The parable of the Good Samaritan. The parable is applicable to all religions and all faiths. Similarly, variations of what we call the golden rule to treat others the way you want to be treated can be found in numerous religions. I'll look at this as the foundation of why we choose to help or not help others. Here are several interpretations of the golden rules from various faiths. Christianity. All things whatsoever you would that a man should do to you, do ye so to them. For this is the law and the prophets. Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. Do to others as you would have them do unto you. Luke chapter 6, verse 31. Confucianism. Do not do to others what you would not like yourself. Then there will be no resentment against you, either in the family or in the state. Buddhism. Hurt not others in a way that you yourself would find hurtful. Hinduism. This is the sum of the duty. Do not unto others what you would have them do unto you. Islam. No one of you is a believer until he desires for his brother that which he desires for himself. Judaism. What is hateful you do not do to your fellow man. This is the entire law. All the rest is commentary. Taoism. Regard your neighbor's gain as your gain, and your neighbor's loss as your own loss. Zoroastrianism. That nature alone is good, which refrains from others, whatsoever is not good for itself. Based upon this snapshot of several different religions using the golden rules as a foundation, it is very important that most religious people want to help those in need, and they have compassion for those individuals. What does each religion say about the homeless, stranded, and down and out? Here's a quick list. And if thy brother be waxen and poor, fallen in decay with thee, then shalt thou relieve him. Yea, thou he be a stranger or a sojourner, that he may live with thee. Take thou no usury of him, or increase, but fear thy God, that thy brother may live with thee. Leviticus chapter 25, verses 35 through 36. That is in Christianity. Islam. They fulfill vows and fear a day whose evil will be widespread, and they give food in the spirit of love, for it is to the needy, orphan, and captive. We feed you for countenance of Allah. We wish not from your reward or gratitude. And your Lord is to give you, and you will be satisfied. He did not find you as an orphan and gave you refuge. He found you lost and guided you. He found you poor and made you self-sufficient. So as for the orphans, do not oppress, and for the petitioners, do not compel. Confucianism. In a country where governed, poverty is something to be ashamed of. In a country that is badly governed, wealth is something to be ashamed of. Buddhism. Have compassion for all things, rich and poor alike. Each have their suffering, some too much, others too little. Judaism. And when you reap the harvest of your land, thou shalt not wholly reap the corners of the field, neither shalt thou gather gleanings of thy harvest. And thou shalt not glean thy vineyard, neither shalt thou gather every grape of the vineyard. Thou shalt leave them for the poor and the stranger. I am the Lord, your God. Hinduism. He who feeds a stranger and a tired traveler with joy attain infinite religious merit. Zoroastrianism. The power and the glory of God is given to those who give protection to those in need. Charitable organizations and helping the homeless. I wish I could name every international, national, and local organization whose sole purpose is to help those who are homeless. I've seen a lot of things in my life, but nothing as amazing as the various groups and the individuals who work and volunteer to help. Their purpose is pretty straightforward. They want to help those who are in need. Increasingly enough, each organization has a different mission. One agency may be centered on providing food. Another agency may provide shelter. Yet another agency may help people find suitable work, while a different organization may provide healthcare services. Some of these organizations mirror certain government agencies in their work, as they may deal with only veterans, or substance abuse, or victims of domestic violence. As I've researched and gotten a chance to see some of these great organizations at work, it is apparent that they face a common challenge: funding. Funding is extremely important for these organizations, and unfortunately, they're in a battle to get it. Although we may scrutinize how our tax dollars are spent, we are still obligated to pay taxes. Encouraged by a higher spiritual calling, people of faith giving offerings to pay some type of tithe. Most have varying views when it comes to donating to social and civic organizations. Some want to see what was done with previous funding, while others want certainty that their funds will be utilized for their stated purpose. All of these are legitimate inquiries. The scrutiny of most charity organizations happen before funding is allocated. Teaching a man to fish. Chinese proverb reads as follows: give a man a fish and you feed him for the day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. Many of us have heard these words dozens of times. We may have said them ourselves. There have been many different explanations of the statement. It has been quoted and misquoted, and its origin has been misguided or misidentified as well. I myself have interpreted this saying in a few ways. Provide for a man, and he will look for you to continue to provide for him. But teach a man how to provide for himself, and he will become self sufficient. Feed a man, and he would only be fed for a short period of time. But teach a man how to feed himself, and it will have a longer impact. If you feed a man, it will have a long lasting negative impact on him. However, if you teach him how to feed himself, that will lead to more positive long term outcome for him. Those are my interpretations. As I've worked with the homeless, stranded, and down and out, this old proverb has given me mixed emotion, both anger and empathy, and left me with two questions. If I help you, will you help yourself? Okay. The second question: if I help you, can you help yourself? That's the challenge that we face in dealing with the homeless. We've seen plenty of signs around: homeless need help, we'll work for food, anything to help, out of luck, homeless, hungry, desperate, stranded, need gas money, out of work, need help. After seeing such signs, most people's compassion will kick in and they will give whatever they can to help that individual situation. More likely than not, people do not ask how this will help the situation or wonder what the individual will do after they receive this assistance. So it often appears that there are more of us feeding than teaching. For me, the next question is interesting. Once I was able to do that, I had a different response. And what was it I was able to do? To take a look at the question itself and take my emotions out of it. I went back to the Chinese proverb: give a man a fish and you'll feed him for the day. Teach a man to fish and you'll feed him for a lifetime. So if I help you, can you help yourself? When I began this journey of helping others, my goal was to be a bridge between those in need and the agencies that provide help. I believe that most homeless individuals can help themselves. They have the competency and capability to do so. This is exclusive to individuals who are genuinely physically, mentally able. However, My profession has taught me most people wonder why homeless individuals do not seek employment. Here's probably a few reasons. They may not have a valid driver's license or photo ID. They may not have a birth certificate or social security card. See, both of those are needed just to work in the United States as part of the I-9 process. A criminal record could affect their ability to find employment. The lack of stable work history could eliminate them from consideration. They do not have suitable clothes for the interview. They do not have a telephone number to list under contact information. They may not be able to pass the pre-hired drug screen. They may not have transportation to get to an interview. And of course, hygiene is an issue. So all of these things play a factor in teaching a person to fish. Millipede effect. As I described earlier, the body of the millipede is similar to a long train with connecting rail cars. But unlike a train, one side of the millipede does have the ability to work and move independently from the other side. The millipede's first and last segment each has a single pair of legs, while the rest of the body has two sets of legs. As the millipede grows, it adds segments to the body and legs to each segment. The millipede moves very slowly, but it needs all the legs working together and in sync to do so. Each pair of legs on one side moves together while the opposite side moves together, giving the millipede a rippling effect when it's moving. What I've discovered in my quest to understand the homeless, stranded, and down and out is that the problem is similar to a millipede. The fight to help the homeless has multiple parts, just as the millipede does. They are separated by interconnection. As I discussed about government, religion, and charitable organizations, all are interconnected in their efforts to help the homeless. Coordination and support is critical to support each of the groups. An example is federal grant programs that are offered to state, social, and civic organizations. What makes the millipede moves is its many legs, just as the countless number of people who work and volunteer in the various organizations are the reasons for the success. Like the legs of the millipede, people don't always move together at the same time. The efforts appear disjointed or slow at times, but the ultimate goal is accomplished. Without its legs, the millipede cannot move, and without the people, the process of helping the homeless does not happen. The movement of the millipede's legs is in unison, is similar to people having a common cause and working together to achieve it.